Hey, this is John with FLO. In this video, we're going to show you how to install a tire on a tubeless ready rim. To install a tubeless tire, you're going to need a few things. Number one, you're going to need a tubeless tire. We love the Continental GP 5000 tire. The FLO wheels, all sport line was designed around this tire specifically, and this is why we recommend it. Great tire, very aero, great rolling resistance, and also great durability. Another tool you're going to need is a tire lever. You're going to need your tubeless sealant. We have a large bottle on hand pretty much at all times, but we also have a small 2-ounce bottle. So for the installation of a tire, you're recommended about 2 ounces. So instead of guessing, what we do is we just fill this 2-ounce bottle every time and then put that in each wheel. You're also going to need some soapy water just to help the bead seat itself, a rag for cleanup later, and a good floor pump. So let's get started. The first thing we'll do is we'll take this tire out of the box. And now tubeless tires are known for being notoriously tight and difficult to get on. If you're having difficulty getting your tire on, you can check out our video that talks about how to install a tubeless tire or tire on a tubeless ready rim, and that's a couple tricks to make that easier. A tire like this is going to definitely have a direction in the way that it rolls. And so as we're unpacking this tire, going around, we're just going to look for the rotation direction, and you're going to find an arrow on the tire, and that arrow is coming up here soon. There it is. So this tire is going to roll in this direction. This here is a rear wheel, so our rolling direction is going to be this way, and our tire is going to go that way. Just want to make sure we match that up. For all of our wheels here, what we do is we make sure that we match up the label on the tire. So in this case, we'll take the 5000 mark. We're going to match that up with the valve stem so that we're all in the same place. Now, a tubeless tire like this, what I like to do is get the whole tire over the rim, and I'll show you why I do that in a minute. So on a tube tire, sometimes what you can do is you can put the first bead on to start. But for this one, I have the whole tire go over the rim, and it's a little easier because these are so tight to get on, to use a lever from the outside of the rim as opposed to the inside. So we just work this on the way around. And then there. So if you look at this tire right now, you can see that both sides are over the tire. Make sure that we have that label lined up. And a good way to start with a tubeless tire is to actually start opposite the valve stem and start putting 1/2 of the bead on the rim itself. So we can start to put that on. Working that all the way around. And then as you're getting closer to that valve stem, you may find that the tire starts to get tight, which is normal. And we want to make sure that that bead of that tire is all the way in the center of the rim, which we talked about in our other video. Let's work it on. A lot of times you can do this by hand. Sometimes with tubeless tires you cannot. So if you're getting the spot where it's tight, what we do is take our tire lever. What I like to do is hold one section with the palm of my hand so that it holds it in place. Take your tire lever. So you want to take the hook section and put that underneath the rim. And you just start working that tire on over the rim. One thing that I really like to make sure that I do is I start very close over here. You don't want to try and put it on in the middle. That'll never work. It's just too tight to get on. So just keep working that tire on. Go, almost there. And that last piece there will snap on. That's the first half of your tire on. And now that that's on, I like to make sure that that bead of that tire is fully in the center of that rim. Just go around and make sure everything's in the center. It's going to make getting that second half on a lot easier. And then what we do is we start the second half. Again, what I like to do is start opposite the valve stem. There's a couple tricks for putting tubeless sealant in. I'll walk you through both of those in a minute. But we always start on this side so that we can install the sealant in one or two ways. So again, we just start working this second half of the tire on, making sure that those beads are still staying in the center, not up on the raised section. And then as we're getting close, there are two options to install sealant. So the first option, and some people like to do this, is they like to take the sealant before the tire is fully installed, and then like to pour the sealant on the inside. Once it's installed, they then rotate the tire so that the sealant goes down here, and then they put the rest of the tire on. Personally, I like to get the whole tire on, and then I like to install it through the valve stem. I just feel you have a better seal, and I don't have a chance really of leaking sealant, and I'll walk you through both of those steps as well. So, work through that second half. Again, just take this with the palm of your hand, hold it in place. And we just work the last part of that tire on. Almost there. That's the last half. Once the tire is fully installed, one thing that we can do is to install the sealant, we're going to want to remove this valve here, this core of the valve. We use a cord remover. We just put that in place, and then we unthread that. Make sure you turn to the left, unthread it. Sometimes around the spokes it can be a little bit difficult. And if that's the case, what you can do is you can use a small set of pliers, and you just hold that and unthread that valve. Once it starts, you should be able to just do it by hand. There we go. Just take the core of that valve out, set it aside for now. Go around the tire just one last time to make sure everything is in the center, because once you get your sealant in there, you don't really want to have it leak. Take the tire itself. Now the sealant, you want to make sure that it's shaken really, really well. It's all mixed up properly. And then we take the top off. And over this opening in the valve, you just start to pour in your sealant. And we want to squeeze the full 2 ounces inside the tire. Tubeless is really great for road now. It's becoming much more popular. It can be a little bit more difficult to set up or to get used to, but once it's set up, it's really amazing. You get very few flats. Tubeless obviously has a self-sealing property, which is just great, and it helps a lot for flats, especially during races or training or anything like that. Once your sealant is in, you're going to want to replace that core before you do anything else, because if you start to move the tire around, your sealant will come back out. Not saying we've never done that here, but just want to make sure that you seal that off properly. You can get that finger tight to start with, and then we'll just use those pliers or that core removal tool again, just to make sure that it's good and tight. If you have a leak in your tubeless setup, sometimes you can take a look at this valve. You'll normally hear where it's coming from. One of the most common misconceptions for tubeless leaks is that it's happening at the valve, and a lot of times that's not the case. So you may want to check another area of the rim to make sure that it's not leaking from somewhere else. Sometimes you'll hear air coming out of spoke holes, and that's a really good indication that you don't have a good seal on your tape. So that's something you want to be careful of. Once that's in place and good and tight, what you want to do now is you want to take the sealant that is in this area and you kind of want to have it coat all the way around the wheel itself. So you flip it up this way, and what you start to do is you start to coat the rim bead of the tire itself, going around in both directions, slow so that we make sure we get a good seal. Then just flip it over and go around in the opposite direction. There we go. Now, when you're going to inflate a tubeless tire, it's very, very common for people to use a compressor or something like an air shot. Now, compressors can be good, especially when you're doing tubeless installations years ago and rims were not designed to be tubeless ready. Today, rims are designed to be tubeless ready, so all you really need is a floor pump. If you hit a tire, or like this with and a rim with a compressor or an air shot, and you do not have a perfect seal on that rim itself with that tubeless valve and the tubeless rim tape, what can happen is air can escape in through one of the spoke holes, go into the rim cavity where air is not meant to be, and your rim will explode. So we want to always recommend you use just a floor pump so that you don't explode your rim. One of the things that we also like to do is use a soapy water. And that soapy water, we go around and we just spray on the beads. And that helps the tire sort of slip into place as we start to add the air pressure to the tire. Go around both sides, give that a good coating. There we go. Go around one more time with that sealant. Let the soapy water settle in. And we just unthread the valve to make sure we're getting the air in there. And then you always cross your fingers at this point just to make sure that it seals. But if you've done it right, hopefully everything works out. When you start to inflate, you may hear a slight leak in the beginning, but you'll start to gain pressure. And on a lot of wheels, when you're inflating like this, you may hear a pop or a snap sound. That's a good thing. That's the bead of the tire moving up over the edge of the inside of the rim. You just heard a small pop there. That means that it's seating in place in that hook area. Make sure you don't want to overinflate a tire, so always look at the label of the tire itself to see what your max pressure is. And you also want to look at the max pressure rating on any FLO wheel. We have tables and charts on each one of our products, and we also have recommended tire pressure charts for your size, your weight, your tire size, your rim width. So we highly recommend you check those out. So here, we're going to go up to around 80 PSI. Just make sure that everything is good and sealed. Once that's done, we're going to take the pump head off. And you're going to want to go around the tire itself. On tubeless tires, there's a small bead, that little lip on the tire itself, that if it's installed properly, you're going to see that bead all the way around on the outside of the rim. If the tire itself isn't seated properly on the rim, that little lip will be lower and you won't be able to see it. A lot of times just sitting at pressure will allow it to actually pop into place, which will be great. And I'm just looking at this one really quick. This one was perfect. So we're all good. That's in place. Now you just take your rag for the cleanup of that soapy water. Go all the way around. Clean that up. And then another thing I like to do after we have a good install like this is just go around one more time and make sure that we're getting that sealant sort of everywhere. A really good tubeless check, once you have something installed tubeless, is to let it sit overnight. If you've done a really good job, you're going to have air in the morning, and that's a good thing. If you do have some leaking or anything like that, there's a few reasons that it may happen. One, maybe you just don't have enough sealant. Just make sure you had those 2 ounces in there. You may have a small air leak in your valve stem, and after we inflate, We just want to make sure we double check the tightness of that valve stem. Sometimes they can loosen up with that pressure. Or worst case, you may have something wrong with your rim tape itself. You may have had a small air pocket that some air is leaking through. But if that is the case, you can always take it off and start again. But stick with it. Tubeless, once it's set up, is great. A lot less flats, great rolling resistance, especially with tires like this, and we highly recommend tubeless. Hope that helps installing a tubeless